All right, I'll say it. It's magic. Is that good enough for you? No? Okay. Take 732. And this will be a short video about another magic method that we can use to help us during debugging to figure out what's actually in our objects. It's called the string method or the str method. Again, another magic, so you're going to see those underscores on either side. But what it allows us to do is replicate what you see over here on the screen. If we wanted to be able to really quickly just print our objects and get this detail, we can actually write a method in our cat object in order to do this for us. And we're going to see that in this video. So I'm adding a magic method called string. What this will do is anytime we print the variable name of our object directly, it will return whatever phrase we put here. This is useful for debugging, especially if there are particular values or particular properties that I want to make sure are actually part of my objects after I create them. And it's a very, very simple method. Now you can use any functionality you want here. Ours is just going to be one line, but in order to create this, we have to create the function def2_string self, and then we're going to call it a day at that line. The reason being, anytime I attach stuff to a self object, it passes from function to function that incorporates or uses that self parameter. So I get self.name, I get self.furColor, I get self.pattern because I just passed self to this particular function. And here comes my one-liner. I'm going to return that f string of what we were printing to the terminal last time from our other program in this particular method. So f self.name is a self.furColor, self.pattern, cat, exclamation mark, because we want to be excited because they're cats, and we save it and call it a day on that. So we'll go over to our cat_sandbox.py program and implement this, but it should make our lives just a bit easier. And you'll notice that I have removed the print statements for each of these cats because, again, we are incorporating this data in our print statement, and we don't have to write out the full thing. So if we just were to print Bert, for example, print Bert and save it, we should see that we get a similar phrase to the one we see above, only there's an exclamation mark at the end because, of course, we are excited about cats. So if I python cat_sandbox.py and I'm printing my object directly, I now get that phrase. Again, this is a magic method. This is something that just happens in Python because of the way that the function is named. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is I'm calling these things functions and I'm calling them methods. They're kind of both the same thing. So what is really a method? That's a good question. So if we want to make a distinction, it's probably best to have a visual aid. And here I've popped up my two files behind me side by side again to show that distinction. It's kind of like when we were talking about arguments and parameters when we were discussing functions for the first time. Arguments and parameters, if you use the words interchangeably, I'm pretty sure that folks will know what you mean, and there won't be too much of a disagreement over where in the program you're trying to refer. However, with methods, it's a similar kind of thing. We're talking about methods being functions that are part of modules. And so when we talk about the constructor method or the string method, it's clear that when we say the string method of cat, we are talking about a function buried in cat.py. We're not talking about something in cat sandbox, and vice versa. If you refer to the main function, we're really talking about our cat sandbox, and we're not talking about our module. This distinction seems semantic, and it largely is. However, as we start to work with programs that contain multiple files, it's easier if we have our vocabulary somewhat clear so that we can know where issues are happening and localize them and find them. And of course, because these are methods of the object, every time I create an object, I get a new of these methods in each cat object. So I should be able to print Bert, print Scoop, and print Ulysses and get the same outcome, but with different self-knowledge substituted in for where the self keyword is used in my return statement when I'm returning my string. So again, self here can be substituted with the particular cat that we're working with in this example, or the particular object that we stood up in our other program. So we've instantiated 3 cats, Bert, Scoop, and Boss, and each of them have different kinds of properties, the self-knowledge that we were talking about in a previous video. So if I were to print this, go to python cat_sandbox.py, I get my 3 different strings here, which allows me to keep track of my different cats. And this is a powerful programming idea. Every time we create a new object of the same type, we get new copies of all the methods. Now, in this case, they're somewhat simple, but as we can see, it substitutes in the specific self-knowledge that each cat has. This allows us to use these modules as a blueprint, something that we can use to standardize or to create multiple copies of something and be able to deal with it in a predictable way.